Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Aces High, and today I'm bringing you guys another video from the infographic show. This one is all about Napoleon. So Napoleon's always interested me, but I've never really taken the time to learn much about him. So I think I'm going to get on a little kick about the French Revolution, and figured the way to dive in is I saw a video titled Napoleon, the Deadly Emperor of Europe. So I figured, why not start there? Check it out. Hey, before we get started, as always, if you guys like the stuff, leave me a like. It really does help me out. And comment what you guys want me to see. You know, what you guys want me to watch. And I'll probably go and do it. If you're new to the channel, hit that sub button and stick around. More content comes out pretty much every day. Although I'm not going to lie, some days I get a little lazy. Anyway, I've talked enough. Let's get started, you guys.
He was the man who established the first French Empire. To the French people, he was a hero. To the French royalty, he was their demise. Napoleon Bonaparte was a scourge to European leaders, but the countries he conquered joined a vast empire, spanning from Spain to Russia. Along with his control over Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte conquered territories in the West Indies, Americas, and North Africa. Napoleon may have been the greatest conqueror history has ever seen. Napoleon Bonaparte was born.
I know that this is going to make me seem like an ignorant American, but I didn't realize that he had taken that much land, conquered that much. I knew a good chunk of Europe, but wow, that actually surprises me.
Born on August 15, 1769, on Corsica, an island in the Mediterranean Sea. Just before his birth, the island of Corsica was conquered by French forces, making baby Napoleon and his family subjects of King Louis XV. At the age of 9, Napoleon joined a military school in France. He excelled in math and history, and after 7 years he received a commission as an officer in the artillery division of the French army. Then in the summer of 1789, the French Revolution began as Parisian mobs stormed the Bastille. The French Revolution concluded with the removal of the monarchy. The country was relabeled as a republic, to be governed by an assembly known as the Convention. Louis XVI was guillotined in 1793, and the French monarchy died with him. With the dismantling of the monarchy and aristocracy, France was thrown into what became known as the Reign of Terror. It's estimated that around 300,000 suspects were arrested and 17,000 people were executed during this time. It's during this tumultuous period.
It's actually interesting because that's pretty common for after a war. Either the new people coming in kind of want to change everything up, and a lot of people are arrested, a lot of people are killed, disappeared, things like that. Or hell, if not much has changed, oftentimes after a war, the country's broke, they have no money, people are starving in the streets, and usually after a major war, there's a lot of problems that happen in countries, so that's pretty typical to hear.
That Napoleon began to gain fame. His first major victory came when he defeated royalist forces supported by the British Navy at the port of Toulon. After the battle, he was celebrated as a war hero. In 1795, Napoleon gained even more fame when he fired upon royalists and defeated anti-republic forces that threatened the new government. His battles against the forces that opposed the new republic gained him favor with the leaders in the new government. Young General Bonaparte was appointed commander-in-chief of the French military, a turn of events eerily similar to the rise of power of Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars. It was 7 days later when Napoleon married his first wife, Josephine de Beauharnais, although they would later be divorced because she did not birth a male heir for Napoleon. With his new power and prestige bestowed upon him by the French government, Napoleon Bonaparte began his military conquest of the region. He started by defeating Austrian forces and forcing Philip von Cobenzl to sign the Treaty of Combo in 1797, which gave France control over the majority of the Austrian nation. By 1799, Napoleon had acquired vast new territories for France and Europe. He shifted his focus to Egypt, where he hoped to dominate the eastern Mediterranean and disrupt British control of India. During this campaign, French soldiers discovered the Rosetta Stone by accident. The Rosetta
That's actually really interesting. That's such a good move. I mean, think about it. If you control the Mediterranean and everything, you control the Suez Canal, you know, Egypt, all that. I mean, just think about how much the British were shipping to India and back, as well as several of their other colonies on that side. They relied on the Suez Canal. So that's wow. Yeah, that was a pretty good move. It's surprising to see how fast he actually rise to power.
Stone was brought to Europe and eventually translated, unlocking the mysteries of Egyptian hieroglyphics. Upon returning to France in 1799, Napoleon began to create a plan to overthrow the French government. This plot would come to be known as the coup d'etat of 18 Brumaire. Napoleon succeeded in dismantling the current governing body and set up a new government called the Consulate, with himself as first consul. Napoleon had now conquered Eastern Europe and the French government. By now, Napoleon had been first consul for almost a year, and this time he had instituted many popular reforms, such as free secondary education and creating the Bank of France to improve the stability of the empire. On December 24, 1800, though, Georges Cadoudal led monarchist rebels in an attempt to assassinate Napoleon Bonaparte with a homemade bomb. The assassination was planned to kill Bonaparte while he was at the opera, as Napoleon sat in the Theatre of the Republic and the Arts in Paris, watching the premiere of The Creation by Joseph Haydn. An explosion erupted outside the building. The assassination plot had failed, and would be called the Infernal Machine plot. It ended with the death of several people outside the theater, but left Napoleon unharmed.
What do you guys think of that? Trying to assassinate Napoleon. Do you guys think he deserved to be, assassinated at the time? I mean, nobody really deserves to be killed, right? But I mean, there's some people that are horrible. Again, I don't know too much about it, but based off everything in the video so far, he seems like an alright guy.
Marked the first time that a bomb had been used for an assassination attempt, and it was during this period in world history that the word terrorism was first used in its current form. The term became synonymous with acts that attempted to dismantle or destroy a leader or ideology. After gaining almost absolute power and surviving more than one attempt on his life, Napoleon set his sights on conquest once again. In 1802, Napoleon sent French forces to the West Indies to secure and protect France's interests in the region. He had decided that it was time for an empire in the Americas and began to assert dominance in the New World. He was mildly successful, but before Napoleon could make his American empire a reality, he had a realization. His navy was not powerful enough to defeat the British. France suffered several defeats at the hands of the ships of the rival nation. Napoleon decided to consolidate his military and sold the Louisiana Territory to the United States, which would come to be known as the Louisiana Purchase. In return,
Did he sell it for money? I guess he's about to tell me. I probably shouldn't have paused it there. But interesting. I always knew that we purchased the Louisiana Purchase from France, from Napoleon, but wonder why he sold it.
return for the land, Napoleon received money that France badly needed. In 1804, the consulate was transformed into an empire, and Napoleon was officially named Emperor of the First French Empire.
Really?
The following year, what was left of Austria and Russia allied themselves with the British. Napoleon decided it was time to bring the rest of Europe to their knees, and began plans to invade England. But in a major defeat at the Battle of Trafalgar, the British naval fleet commanded by Admiral Nelson destroyed the French navy and ended Napoleon's plans to invade England. Realizing that the British Navy was again too powerful, Napoleon turned his attention to conquering Russia and the Holy Roman Empire. In 1805, French forces defeated Tsar Alexander I of Russia and Holy Roman Emperor Francis II at the Battle of Austerlitz. This eventually led to Tsar Alexander I signing a treaty with Napoleon and giving Napoleon control of all of Eastern Europe. There was a time of relative peace in the First French Empire until 1812, when Russia withdrew from the treaty and once again allied itself with Britain. Napoleon made the decision that Russia must be invaded and completely conquered if he was going to maintain control of the region. The invasion led to the bloodiest battles of the Napoleonic Wars. The Battle of Borodino was fought just outside of Moscow. The Russian forces were estimated to have suffered around 45,000 casualties, while the French lost approximately 30,000 men. Although both sides took great losses, Tsar Alexander I refused to surrender, and Napoleon refused to abandon his conquest. But then,
That's really interesting because if he pushed all the way up to Moscow, that means he got through the Eastern Bloc countries. Like a lot of the countries that were former USSR, unless those were all considered part of Russia at the time. But I mean, it's still, if he got all the way in Moscow, yeah, he pushed through many of what countries were former USSR. I guess not former at this point, but former today, to get there, and that's incredible. That's a hell of an empire. That's wow. We just didn't learn as much of this in school.
and the Russian winter did what the Russian army could not. Due to lack of supplies and resources, the French army was forced to retreat from the bitter Russian winter, and Napoleon returned to Paris. In 1813, the combined forces of Russia, Prussia, Austria, and Sweden defeated Napoleon's armies in Europe. This forced Napoleon to abdicate his throne on April 11, 1814. The European leaders decided to banish Napoleon to the Mediterranean island of Elba. However, due to his craftiness and help from loyal supporters, Napoleon escaped captivity and returned to France in 1815. He reclaimed the throne in what was known as the 100 Days. After returning to France, Napoleon re-established his power and began his conquest once again. He swept across Europe, meeting British forces and their allies at the Battle of Waterloo.
This guy just doesn't know when to give up. I do know Waterloo. I'm pretty sure that was his downfall.
The British commander, the Duke of Wellington, decided to wait for Napoleon to attack rather than use precious men and resources in an advancing assault. Napoleon's desire for conquest pushed him to take the offensive. He sent his forces into battle. At first, Napoleon was largely successful using infantry and cavalry charges. His men were disciplined and believed in their leader. Wellington and his generals were confident that the battle was going to be lost due to the unrelenting French attacks. However, in a stroke of lucky timing, Prussian forces joined the British army and helped them repel the French advances. Napoleon decided to use his Imperial Guard, the force always reserved to decide battles, to end the war. But due to a miscalculation, Napoleon split his Imperial Guard instead of sending them into battle together. This led to both smaller forces being defeated and a retreat by the French army. The Battle of Waterloo made Great Britain the dominant global power for the next 100 years. After Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, the leaders of Europe decided he needed to be sent further away. Napoleon Bonaparte was exiled to St. Helena, a remote volcanic island in the South Atlantic Ocean. The British kept...
I've got a question. Maybe you guys can answer this down in the comments for me. Why didn't they just kill the guy? Is it because he had so many followers? If they kill him, they'll get an uprising? Or, I mean, I'd assume that they get an uprising if by those same people if they banished him. So why not just kill the guy? I mean, let's be real. Or at least imprison him. I mean, yeah, I don't know. This exile thing just clearly isn't working.
Kept 2 Navy frigates on patrol of the island at all times to ensure that Napoleon stayed in exile. Napoleon eventually died of cancer on May 5, 1821 on St. Helena at the age of 51. He was originally buried under 3 stone slabs beneath 2 willow trees, but later his body was moved back to France where it remains to this day. Due to Napoleon's fame, he became a legend. As with all legends, incredible stories were told and myths created about the man. Conspiracy theories that Napoleon was poisoned instead of dying from natural causes spread like wildfire.
Maybe.
People believe that his remains were stolen on the way back to Europe and secretly buried at an undisclosed location in Paris.
I mean, to be fair, that does happen. I mean, somebody tried to break into Abraham Lincoln's grave, you know?
You've probably heard the claim that Napoleon was extremely short. This was actually one of the myths that came out of the Napoleonic legends. It was true that Napoleon was called Le Petit Caporal, or the Little Corporal, but this name had nothing to do with his height. Instead, his men used it as a term of endearment. It was said that when Napoleon died, he was 5 feet 2 inches tall, 2 inches shorter than Kevin Hart. However, it's been determined that the measurement provided was in French inches, which at the time were longer than English inches. When the measurement is converted, Napoleon was closer to 5 feet 6 inches tall, making him 2 inches taller.
That's... Alright, let's be real though. 5'6" is still short as hell. I mean, I'm 5'9" and I feel short. I'm shorter than average.
Than Kevin Hart. Sorry, Kevin. This means that Napoleon was actually average height for a male in Europe at the time he was alive. Was Napoleon the greatest conqueror ever? His military, political, and social accomplishments were impressive and some still exist today. He survived several assassination attempts and escaped exile only to return to Europe and very nearly take back his empire. Regardless of his height or legends, Napoleon Bonaparte was most assuredly a force to be reckoned with in the 18th and 19th centuries. He conquered vast amounts of land around Europe, controlled several territories overseas, and marched deep into Russia. Europe had not been unified under one ruler since the Roman Empire, and Napoleon Bonaparte was the first conqueror to succeed in creating an empire in Europe and abroad where so many before him had failed, even if only briefly. Now, go check out...
Alright, you guys, let's have a talk about that one. Tell me what you think. I mean, seriously, I love to read your guys' comments. I love to know what the hell you're thinking about it. My biggest question is, maybe somebody can answer this for me. Why exile the man? It clearly didn't work, and then you exile him farther. I know that you put boats on patrol, and I guess it worked that time, but why not just imprison him or kill him? You know, if you're really trying to keep him down like that, it just doesn't make sense. Also, I just have to throw it out there again. 5'6" ain't that tall, so he was still a short guy. Anyway, hope you guys liked it. Leave me a comment with what you guys want to see next, and I'll see if I can make it happen. Till next time, this is Aces High. Love y'all, and I'm out.